Jason from the Gaslight Baker Theater in Lockhart, Texas. We've been reading, for your quarantine pleasure, we've been reading through the first book of the Hank the Cowdog series, The Original Adventures of Hank the Cowdog by John R. Erickson. If you'd like to see more Hank goodness, I'll put in the comment section down below a little bit of some links for you to look up and some websites you can go to and find out anything you might need about Hank. All right. So I'm going to start reading with Chapter 5 of The Original Adventures of Hank the Cowdog, Another Bloody Murder. When we crossed the cattle guard that put us back on the ranch, I felt a change come over me. In town, I'd been just another happy-go-lucky dog without a care in the world, but back on the ranch, I felt that same crushing sense of responsibility that's known to people in high places, such as presidents, prime ministers, emperors, and such. Being the head of ranch security is a great honor, but also a dreadful burden. I remembered the chicken house murder. I still didn't have any suspects, or I had too many suspects. Maybe that was it. Everyone was a suspect. Well, everyone built the milk cow, and I'd pretty much scratched her off the list. And the porcupine, since they only eat trees. But every other creature on the ranch was under the shadow of suspicion. Except Drover. He was too chicken to kill a chicken. Well, when we got home, I trotted up to the chicken house and went over the whole thing in my mind. While I was sitting there lost in thought, a chicken came up and pecked me on the tail. Scared the fool out of me just for a second. I snarled at her and made her squawk and flap her wings. That's another thing about this job. Every day, every night, you put your life on the line, and for what? A bunch of idiot birds that would just as soon peck you on the tail as tell you good morning. Sometimes you gotta wonder if it's worth it. And all that keeps you going is dedication to duty. In the end, that's what separates the top echelon of cow dogs from the common rabble, whatever that word is. Anyway, the dogs that don't give a rip is what I'm saying. Well, I had nothing to work with. No evidence, no case. There wasn't a thing I could do until the killer struck again. I could only hope that me and Drover could catch him in the act. I decided to change my strategy. Instead of throwing a guard around the chicken house, we would use the stakeout approach. Stakeout is a technical term which we use in this business. Webster defines stake as a length of wood or metal pointed at one end for driving into the ground. It comes from the Anglo-Saxon word staka, akin to the Danish stek. Out is defined as away from, forth from, or removed from a place, position, or situation. It comes from the Middle English ut. That's about as technical as I can make it. In layman's terms, a stakeout is basically a trap. You leave the chicken house unguarded, don't you see? And you watch, and you wait, and you watch until the villain makes his move, and then you swoop in and get him. It's pretty simple, really, when you get used to the technology, or terminology. At dark, me and Drover staked the place out. We hid in some tall weeds, maybe 30 feet from the chicken house. Time sure did drag. First couple hours, we heard coyotes howling off in the pasture. Drover kept looking around with big eyes. I thought he might try to slip off to the machine shed, but he didn't. After a while, he laid his head down on his paws and went to sleep. I could have kept him awake. Pulled rank and demanded that he stay awake, but I thought, oh, what the heck. The little guy probably needed the sleep. I figured I could keep watch and wake him up when the time came for action. Well, then I fell asleep. But the funny thing is, I dreamed that I was awake. Sitting here and standing guard, I kept saying, Hank, are you still awake? And Hank said, sure I am. If I was asleep, you and I wouldn't be talking like this, would we? And I said, no, I suppose not. It seems to me it's kind of a waste of good sleep to dream about what you were doing when you were awake, but that's what happened. I heard something squawk, and I said, Hank, what's that? Nothing. You sure? Sure, I'm sure. You're wide awake and watching the stakeout, aren't you? Well, I think so, yes. Then stop worrying. Well, the squawking went on, and the next thing I knew, Drover was jumping up and down. Hank, oh, Hank, he's back. Murder, help, blood. We fell asleep. Oh, my gosh, Hank, wake up. Huh? I ain't asleep. And right then my eyes popped open, and I woke up. Dang the luck, I was asleep. I was afraid of that. We dashed out of the weeds and found a body south of the chicken house. The M.O. was the same. There's another technical term, M.O. It means modus of operation, which means how it was done. We shorten it to M.O. A pattern began to emerge. The killer had struck twice, and both times he had killed a white leghorn hen. Actually, that might not have been a crucial point because there weren't any other colored hens on the place, but I mention it to demonstrate the kind of deep thinking that goes into solving a case of this type. You can't overlook a single detail, even those that don't mean anything. But the most revealing clue was that the murderer hadn't dragged his victim off, and that meant that he hadn't killed for food, but only for the sport of it. In other words, we had a pathological killer on the loose. Now, this is very significant, the first big break in the case. At last, I had an M.O. that narrowed the suspects down to coyotes, coons, skunks, badgers, foxes, rats. It hadn't eliminated anybody, and I was right back where I started. I hunkered down and studied the body. It was still warm. Warm chicken. My mouth began to water, and I noticed a rumble in my stomach. Ooh, this fresh evidence was pointing the case in an entirely new direction. Drover, why don't you run on and get some sleep? You had a tough day. Oh, I'm awake now. You look sleepy. I do? Yes, you do. Awful sleepy. Your eyes seem kind of baggy. Don't you think we should sound the alarm? Not just yet. I need to do a little more study on the corpse. My stomach growled real loud. Drover perked his ears. What was that? Oh, I didn't hear anything. He waited and listened. I concentrated on making my stomach shut up. You can do that, you know. Control your body with your mind. Only it didn't work this time. My stomach growled again. Sounded like a rusty gate hinge. What is that? Rigor mortis, I said. Chickens do that. Yeah, run along now and get some sleep. We got a big day ahead of us. Well, okay. He started off and heard my stomach again. He turned around and twisted his head and stared at me. Was that you? Now, don't be absurd. Good night, Drover. He shrugged and went on down to the gas tanks. I gave him plenty of time to bed down, get comfortable, snap at a few mosquitoes, and fall asleep. My mouth was watering so much that it was dripping off my chin. And when everything was real quiet, I snatched up the body, loped out into the horse pasture, and began my post-mortem investigation. It was very interesting. I didn't hurry this part of the investigation. I labored over my work for several hours and fell into a peaceful sleep. When I awoke, it was bright daylight. I could feel the rays of the sun warming my coat. I glanced around trying to remember where I was, and when I figured it out, my heart almost stopped beating. I was lying in the center of a circle of white feathers. Several more feathers were clinging to my mouth and nose. My belly bulged, and Sally Mae was standing over me, a look of horror on her face. Hank, you're the one. Oh, Hank, how could you? Huh? No, wait, there's been a mistake. You see, the chicken was already dead, and I thought, hey, listen, I can explain everything. It must have looked pretty bad, me lying there in the midst of all that damage and evidence. Sally Mae headed down to the house, swinging her arms and walking fast. I didn't know what to do. If I ran, it would look bad. If I stayed, it would look bad. No matter what I did, it would look bad. Maybe eating the darn chicken had been a mistake. I was still sitting there mulling over my next course of action when Sally Mae returned with her husband. There, look, you see who's been killing the chickens? Your dog. I whapped my tail against the ground and put on my most innocent face. Loper and I had been through a lot together. Surely he would know that his head of ranch security wasn't a common chicken-killing dog. He had to trust me. But I could see his face harden, and I knew I was cooked. Hank, you bad dog. I never thought you'd do something like this. Well, I didn't. It was all a mistake. I'd been framed. Come here, Hank. I crawled over to him. He picked up the chicken head, which was lying on the ground. I hadn't eaten it because I found that beaks are hard to swallow. He tied a piece of string around the head and tied it around my neck. There. You wear that chicken head till it falls off. Maybe that'll help you remember that killing hens doesn't pay around here. They left, talking in low voices and shaking their heads. I tried to bite the string and get that thing off my neck, but I couldn't do it. I was feeling mighty low, mighty blue. I was ashamed of myself, but also outraged at the injustice of it. I headed down to the corral to find Drover. Instead, I ran into Pete the barn cat, just the guy I didn't want to see. He was sunning himself in front of the saddle shed, in other words, loafing, which is what he does about 95% of the time. The mice were rampant down at the feed barn, but Pete couldn't work a mouse patrol into his busy schedule. It interfered with his loafing. That's a cat for you. He saw me before I saw him. He yawned and a big grin spread upon his face. Nice necklace you got on, Hanky. Where could a feller buy one of those? Now, you have to be in the mood for Pete, and I wasn't. I made a dive for him, and he escaped instant death by a matter of inches. He hissed and ran, and I fell in right behind him. I chased him around the corrals. He hissed, and I barked, and there were several horses in the west lot, and they all started bucking and kicking up their heels. It was my lousy luck that Slim happened to be riding on one of them, a 2-year-old colt, as I recall, and he started yelling, Hank, get out of here. Whoa, Sinbad, easy, bro. Nobody around here ever yells at the cat. Why? I don't know. I just don't understand. I gave up the chase. I would settle accounts with Pete some other day. I loped over to the gas tank looking for Drover. He heard me coming, sat up, saw the chicken head around my neck, turned tail, and sprinted for the machine shed as fast as he could go. Drover, wait, it's me, Hank. He kept going. I guess he didn't want to get involved with a criminal. I went down to the gas tank and lay down. Boy, I felt low. I tried to sleep, but I didn't have much luck. That chicken head was starting to smell, and it reminded me all over again of the injustice of my situation. Off in the distance, I could hear Pete. He was still up in a tree he had climbed to escape my attack, and he was singing a song called Mamas Don't Let Your Puppies Grow Up to Be Cowdogs. And now and then he'd stop singing, and I'd hear him laughing. Really got under my skin. I lay there brooding for a long time, then I pushed myself up, and all of a sudden, it was clear what I had to do. They had left me no choice. I took one last look at my bedroom there under the gas tank and started up the hill. As I passed by the machine shed door, Drover stuck his head out. Psst, where you going? I trotted past. I'm leaving. He crept out, glanced around to see if anybody was watching, and came after me. Leaving? That's right. I quit. Resign. His jaw dropped. You can't do that. You just watch me. This chicken head was the last straw. I'm fed up with this place. I'm moving on. Moving up? Where are you going? I don't know yet. West. Towards the setting sun. He was quiet for a minute, then he said, I'll go with you. No, you won't. How come? Because, Drover, I'm starting a new life. I'm going to become an outlaw. The breath whistled through his throat. An outlaw? That's right. They've driven me to it. I tried to run this ranch, but it just didn't work. I'm going back to the wild. One of these days, they'll be sorry. But Hank, goodbye, Drover. Take care of things. Sorry it has to end this way. Next time we meet, I won't be Hank the Cowdog. I'll be Hank the Outlaw. So long. And with that, I trotted off to a new life as a criminal, outcast, nomad, and wild dog.